How are we doing? Woo! Thank you so much. Thanks for being here. I'm loud, so they put me on the 2:00 session to just open it up a little bit. This is Creating Inclusive Pathways. We've got 40 minutes together. I'd love to start by introducing you to our fabulous panel, and I'd like each of them to introduce themselves. So Antonio, I'm going to start with you, and for each panelist, go ahead and introduce yourself, your company, a summary of what you do, and then a little bit about how your work relates specifically to inclusion. So Antonio, we'll start with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Good afternoon. No, I need some more energy, guys. I just got off a plane. Good afternoon. That's what I'm talking about. Give me the same energy you gave her. To Nick's point, I'm Antonio Hairston. I'm Vice President for Recruiting at William Morris Endeavor, WME. Also our 160/90 creative marketing agency. So I lead recruiting for our early careers team, for hiring agents, and for creative professionals. My work also spans in our diversity outreach efforts. So we look at how we partner with external organizations to proactively pipeline talent for all stages between early careers, mid-level, and senior level leaders. And I've been there close to 2 years.
Great. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Are we all feeling sleepy after lunch? Are we good?
I'm sorry, I started this. I'm sorry.
My name is Joe Tischbern. I am the Vice President in charge of Talent Development and Employee Engagement for Chedraui USA, which you may know better as Smart and Final and El Super grocery stores. I've been with the company for 33 years. So yeah, it's been the only job I've ever had, and I get to have my dream job, which is awesome. And how what I do relates to this topic is simply my role is employee engagement and bringing people together, company culture, and I'm also part of our company's D&I community.
Well, those are hard acts to follow, but I will try. Hi, everyone. My name is Christine White, and I'm the head of talent acquisition North America for Alstom. So I don't know if you've heard of us, but we make trains, we run airports, so we are really connected to the people of this country. I am responsible for recruiting from beginning to end for all of our operational centers, and I also play a pivotal role in our Center for Excellence for Talent Management and our cultural initiatives. I'm based in Los Angeles. I just want to say thank you to the From Day One team and to Nick for having me here today.
Wonderful. Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Mooney, she, her. I'm a managing director at an organization called Saramount. We exist because we believe in building inclusive workplaces, and we get to do this alongside of 600 corporate partners every single day, advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion work. That really looks all the way from how we build work across a talent life cycle, effective employee resource groups, research really that is compelling around, of course, how we measure all things inclusion. That's critical to this work. And I'm so thrilled to be a part of this incredible panel.
And I'm gonna try and wrap this up. I know this is gonna be tough. Mike Watson from Eightfold. It's nice to be back here in LA at From Day One. I've been here a few times, so it's good to see some familiar faces. I'm a senior director of customer success, so I handle our entire customer portfolio across the globe. I'm also a former customer of Eightfold, so first 25 years of my career was in corporate HR, and I've worked for companies like Western Digital, Workday, Paycom. There's a few that I've worked for in the past. So, one of the things that I think ties this all in to this topic here is we really try to use AI for what we call good, right? So we match people to opportunities through AI. And what we do is we try to remove the bias. So if you don't need an education and you got all the skills to do this job here, you should be matched to that job. And that's really the mission that we're on, is trying to create an equitable playing field for everybody out there. And I think about my parents that are in their late 80s now. They were both in the military. They didn't have formal degrees. And if they would have came out and tried to advance in organizations without having that formal degree, it would have been really hard for them. So every day I go to work, I'm trying to level that playing field for veterans, for people, working moms that didn't have a chance to go to school, dads, everyone across the board that just hasn't gotten a fair shake.
Terrific. I'm feeling it. Let's just give our panel a round of applause. Aren't they great? Great. Ooh, I can move this. Okay, because I don't want to block y'all. So here, don't mind me. Okay, Antonio, let's go ahead and start with you. Oh, this is so much better. Okay, so we think of ERGs and review processes as kind of sometimes being separate functions within an organization. So what are some ways that leaders can leverage their ERGs to set and achieve more meaningful development goals, either for themselves or for their teams or perhaps for their functions? What are some actionable things that managers and leaders in this room could think about in terms of blending those things together?
It's a good question, Nick. First and foremost, I think leaders can do one simple thing: join them. Join them, participate, advocate, promote. I think in some instances, leaders see them as ERGs, as nice to haves. I really see them as the heartbeat and the pulse of the culture. I think that you can use ERGs, if done effectively, to really build some strategic plans within your own personal development and your team's personal development. At Endeavor, we have 8 different ERGs that we have an opportunity to advocate for. Over 2,000 members are a part of those, and it's an authentic way to really build community. I have 4 of my team members who are either a part of the leadership board or a part of a committee. And so as we think about our conversations in quarterly reviews or semi-monthly reviews, we talk about their personal development. And we talk about ways in which we can stretch them, ways in which we can give them stretch assignments. And if I can't offer that from an immediate direction on my team, I see ERGs playing a role in that, in providing the leadership skill sets, providing project management skill sets, providing collaboration across cross-functional teams. There's so many elements I think that we can really tap into that shows your employee, shows that your team, that you're engaged, that you're invested in their development. And so I think that's one essential way of doing that. I think you can also look at how you reach ERGs to help your bottom line. As the leader of recruitment, as I'm thinking about my recruitment strategy, as I'm thinking about our calendar of events, it's my responsibility, because I'm also a part of an ERG, to leverage them in ways in which they can help advocate for the business as well. And so, yes, we are there advocating as recruiters, but I see our ERGs as being brand ambassadors for our culture and community as well. So each and every time that we have a list of events, we have a designated recruiter assigned to a respective ERG to talk about what are we doing in recruitment? What organizations are we tied into? What colleges and universities are we tied into? Because one thing I know, when people don't know, they assume. And sometimes when they don't know, they assume you're doing nothing. And so it's just another touch point and engagement opportunity to show and advocate for your own team of the efforts that you're doing. And I will say, lastly, seeing my team be a part of ERGs inspired me this year. And so this year I became a mentor as a part of our ERG mentorship program. And, one could say, or I could say personally, I've done that already and been there, done that. But as a leader, it gives me the opportunity to connect with someone outside of my direct team. And yes, I'm serving as the mentor, but we're bouncing ideas off of each other, and I get a fresh new perspective from someone so far removed from my direct team that it gives me a chance to utilize some of those metrics and things that we talk about, ideas with my direct team members. So it's as much of a tool for my team as it is for me as well.
Fantastic. Opening it up to the whole panel, and perhaps even broadening the question a bit more for the whole panel. Strategies for leveraging ERGs, just in general. It could be review processes, maybe even recruitment, talent engagement, things like that. From your experience, some of the ways that leaders in the room can creatively leverage ERGs in perhaps a way that they haven't before.
I just might add, I think that's so true about executives coming and stepping and showing up. That's so critically important. What I think also, and what we spend a lot of time at Ceramount doing and working with executive leaders, especially sponsors, is knowing how to then sponsor. And when we think about this real actual opportunity between an executive sponsor that spends time in performance management, succession planning on behalf of their organization, how do we really help equip our executive sponsors to see the unique skill sets that are being developed within their ERG leaders, from budget management to, again, as you were saying, kind of mentorship, coaching, program management, project management, all of the aspects that are so ripe and ready for our ready next talent. And so I think this is also an opportunity for us in leadership and in work we do in inclusion to say, how do we help our executive sponsors really connect the dots for those leaders in ERGs? Because they're passionate, they're ready, they're invested. Even when we're not paying in many cases or compensating them, they are the talent that we want to see in the future. And I think we have an opportunity to help executive sponsors begin to kind of correlate that for their ERG development and really supply the what's in it for them as ERG leaders.
Yeah, I agree with you, Katie. And I think at the core, it's important to support participation because we want all the voices of our organization to be part of the ERGs. Not just the senior level executives, that's great, but everyone really needs to hear that their voice is important. And so we find that many voices are not able to attend the ERG, because my manager doesn't think it's important, or I have to get this project done. And we've seen a real struggle with mid-level management supporting ERG participation. So we're really trying to shift the paradigm so the mid-management level can really embrace and support ERG participation. I think that falls into your comments as well as yours, Antonio.
Yeah, and one other thing I'd add to that, that's a tough situation to be in when you don't have buy-in from the top. But let's assume that you have buy-in from the top and start embedding this into your interview process. Start talking to your candidates that are coming in, especially during those closing conversations where we've already got through the interview. I know I want you. We think you want us. We're having those closing conversations. Talk about your ERG program. Talk about maybe if you know the percentage of employees that are in it. Talk about that. Talk about those pathways, right? Start laying it out there for them. Now, it's a different situation, Christina, when you're talking about when you have middle managers saying, hey, you need to get this work done.
Yeah,
and
well, when
focus
you're
over
building
here.
trains, they're like, you can't go. I need you to do this
Right.
welding. And it's like, the tension, right?
But I think just on top of all this great stuff with ERGs, if you start embedding these conversations into these recruiting calls or closing calls, you'll start closing a lot of those candidates that this is important to them, that it never came up in the interview, right? These are the ties that bind, that keep people at an organization for 33 years.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I think that's a common conversation and transaction with the early career work stream, with the interns. Within the last 3 or 4 years, the incoming interns, the early careers, are very interested in DEI and belonging, ERG, what is the promotability rate for a certain, group. So I think this new generation is very in tune with what you're saying.
Yeah, Christine, I want to stay with you for a moment and talk specifically about recruiting and hiring. So something that Alstom did was move away from experience-based hiring and more towards skills-based hiring. We talk about creating an inclusive pathway, right? So can you share a little bit more, just share with us everything that you did to make that happen, in terms of, positioning that internally, guidance for other leaders in the room who perhaps want to make a similar, that's a big methodological
thanks, Nick.
shift.
I really want to talk about that.
Just give us the whole story, but in 3 minutes, please. Thank you.
It's really a work in progress. It's a bit messy, but we have instituted a transformation, and we have made a very substantive business case that we can't focus solely on experience or legacy or even education, right? So we have gone to a process where we're looking for a specific set of skills, and we created a matrix for the core skills that we needed for all of our exempt and non-exempt positions. So HR and TA, of course, you have to partner, right? You really have to be symbiotic, but the resistance has been very, very intense. So the entire TA team and the HR team, we are the change agents at the micro level, like when you're having your recruitment kickoff session with the hiring manager, or when you're in a QBR, quarterly business review. So we're constantly talking about this shift to skill-based recruiting. I mean, Eightfold, really put this whole concept on the map in terms of having a product to do that. But the business, both mid-level and seniors, are like, yeah, that sounds all great, but this guy's from Penn State, come on. Or this finance guy from Stanford, I'm like, He has to pass the Excel test. And I kid you not, we get Stanford, we get MIT, and they can't pass the Excel test. So when that happens, we share those results, anonymously, and we have seen a pattern. So this goes beyond recruiting, it goes into our whole educational ecosystem and what makes a person ready to work. So just a few comments there.
Yeah. Just to touch on that, right? So almost every single one of my customers right now is going through this transformation.
Yeah.
Right, and the transformation is moving skills away from the job description and the job to the people.
Yeah.
So what I think will happen in 20 years is, I won't go from a senior director to a VP to a senior VP or any of those other levels anymore, right? I will stay somewhat stagnant in my title, but I might spend 30% of my time doing work in this group because that's the skills I have. And I might spend 40% of my time helping out this group because I have skills to help there too. So I might not just have one title. I might be doing 3 or 4 different jobs and 3 or 4 different roles, because now I have a system that tells me the skills that person has, and not just the skills, but the adjacent skills, right? And we know from those adjacent skills that if you know some of these skills, you can pick up on some of those jobs very, very quickly. So imagine this, right? You're laying out your pathways for your folks, and you're saying to this controller, you don't always have to be a controller. And I'm going to give you a real life example. I interviewed with Eightfold for their director of TA position. Interview, went through the process, they came back, they said, Mike, we love you, but, and I'm like, oh shit, I didn't get the job.
You're like,
they said, no, but we think you're perfect for a different position. That's running customer success. I never in a million years thought I would be running customer success.
I think you're perfect for it. You have the skills.
And now November 1st, I'm moving into a new role where I'm going to be running training delivery for all of our customers across the world.
Nice.
Because apparently the skills I have collate and coalesce to training. I had no idea. But because we're using these large data sets, we can see these anomalies and we can see these patterns, and then we can lay those out for our employees and say, hey, you're trying to be this in 3 years from now? Here's the courses you need to take, here's the classes you need to take, here's the skills you need to gain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're doing some cutting edge work as well about skills-based when we think about at Saramount linking our 2,400 education partners and institutions to directly corporations through job simulations so that they really can be getting the exact skills necessary, especially when we're in industries where there's gaps.
Yeah.
And people don't know how to get accessibility into some of these areas in different fields. So we're really excited as well to contribute to this space from a early career talent perspective and linking higher education and the incredible amount of students to, of course, their future careers.
Katie, I want to stay with you for a moment. So your work focuses on creating these inclusive workspaces. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that intersection of DEI and talent strategy, and perhaps talk a little bit about some ways that leaders can have these components help one another, and then also, we love a good measuring stick. Any recommendations on how to measure it effectively?
Oh goodness, so thank you for the question. I don't know if it's an intersection, but more of a collision. DEI colliding into, of course, talent. And that is ever so apparent when I think about our partner, for example, Microsoft and the CDO, Lindsay Ray McIntyre, who took an added role, of course, in talent development. She's the CDO of talent development and DEI. Or we see Christina Schilling at Verizon, who has taken on the added component of talent because, again, of that natural collision. I think, interestingly enough, again, when I talk about collision, this is our opportunity to reframe in this moment. When this work is being weaponized, there's pushback, there's rollback. This is our time to actually talk about what do we mean when we say collision about DEI and talent development. Because if we are very clear, and whether you call it inclusion and belonging, equity, whatever words you are calling it, it is absolutely centered in diversity. So diversity and the fact that representation matters, and that when we think about the future of work, students and those of younger generations are 2 times more likely to turn down a job if they don't see diversity in the organization. Point blank period, the data tells us that. When you think about equitable access and opportunities, that's clearly the E. Everyone has a right to a fair workplace where they can compete and they can go forward. And that is for everyone. And I had the opportunity, when you think about metrics and measurement yesterday, where I got the opportunity to spend time with Chair Charlotte Burrows of the EEOC. And what she shared with us about diversity and inclusion is that there are 81,000 new charges. That's a 10% increase from last year. They have recovered more than $640 million in claims. And so when we think about the true value of diversity, equity, and inclusion right now, that is compelling data and information that if we don't have inclusion at the center, there is real risks to manage. And that is absolutely a tight effort between, of course, DEI and talent. And then finally, inclusion. What we know even just from learning and development opportunities, having inclusive leaders, involving curriculum of that magnitude, that leads to more effective, efficient workplaces that are, we've known from the research, has withstand elements around innovation, creating a culture of belonging, reducing attrition risks. So these are all absolutely a clear collision between, as I say, diversity, equity, inclusion, and talent right now in this moment. And I think we get this opportunity to reframe that narrative. And I think it's more important than ever, especially when we see, of course, some of those embellished headlines.
Yeah, speaking of embellished headlines, with DEI, deprioritization, being kind of a hot topic this year, opening it up to the whole group. If leaders in the audience are experiencing inertia in their organizations, other than copy pasting that EEOC data point that you just shared, what are some other, just some other strategies for continuing to demonstrate the value of diversity in the organization? The whole group. Joe.
I would say for us, we are definitely one of those companies that's risk averse when it comes to talking about anything that could possibly be controversial in any way. And so being the head of employee engagement and culture and being somebody that is passionate about everything you just said, what we've done is we've made it more individualized. We've taken our learning opportunities and said, no, we're not just going to train you. We're going to help you find the skills that exist in you, and then we're going to coach you until you believe that you can do whatever you want to do, whatever success looks like for you. We believe that every person comes to work wanting to be successful. Nobody comes to work wanting to suck. That's what we always say, right? But then we believe that it's our responsibility to create an environment where they can be successful.
That's right.
But success looks different to every single person. Success for me might mean climbing the corporate ladder and becoming so-and-so, whatever, C, whatever, O, right? But success for somebody else might just be, I have a really good job, I'm proud of myself, I'm proud of who I am and what I do here and the contribution I make here. And so what we do is we try to encourage that. We just try to encourage that through every learning opportunity we have to give people the belief that not only the company believes in them, but they can believe back in the company.
Wow,
Yeah.
That's amazing. It sounds like you're really lifting people up.
We're trying. We are trying.
Wow, I love that.
And I've been saying this for a long time. The number one thing we could all do today, with some exception, let me say that, is go back and remove the educational requirements from your job descriptions.
Wow.
I mean, unless Now, I always use this analogy. If I'm going in for brain surgery, yes, I do want that person to have a medical degree. I don't mind Stanford in this situation.
TMI.
Right? But look, when I ran recruiting for 25 years, my best recruiters were people I found baristas at Starbucks. They were serving me at restaurants, right? They were very personable. They would come up, they would talk. I'm like, man, if they can talk to me like this, I could put them on a phone and talking to candidates all day long, right? Loan folks. These were all folks that didn't have formal degrees, right? They barely made it out of high school. They kind of went to the school of hard lucks. And now they found an opportunity where someone was willing to give them an opportunity, and they worked their butts off for me. They worked their butts off. So, I think if there's one thing we can do, look at the jobs where, do I really need a formal education for a recruiter? Like, do I really need this for my bookkeeper? When I got that single mom that's been running books for 20 years and never had time to go back to school because she's taking care of her kids, but she has all the skills to do the job. Like, let's just hire these people. Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Why are we so hung up on where we went? I don't get it.
Yeah. Michael, I want to stay with you for a moment. So one of Eightfold's pillars is I pulled it from the company statement, to quote, provide data intelligence on what people are capable of doing instead of just what they have done in the past. How do you do that? And also, if company stakeholders in the room want to implement that kind of change, measuring what people are capable of doing, how do they start?
How they've traditionally done this in the past is hire the Deloittes and the Accentures of the world and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars for a 6-month project to map skills on a spreadsheet. When you're done, those skills are already out of date. And you got to re-up for another couple hundred or a couple $1 million, right?
I remember those days, Accenture.
There's a reason why this is real bald up top and why this is real gray here. Real quick, we've ingested over 1.5 billion career paths. We've ingested over 1 billion roles. We've ingested so in our database, we have over 1 million skills, if you will. And so we can look at your profile and say, okay, Mike has talent acquisition, and he also has screening. But maybe I didn't have screening on my resume. But the skills adjacencies and those models, because it's so large, we can look at it and say, okay, we know Mike has this skill here. He just doesn't have it on his resume, or he doesn't realize he has it. So, and this is where the AI comes in, because this helps steer my recruiters' conversations, because the AI is saying, hey, we're looking for this skill. This person says they have this skill, but when the AI looks at the models for everyone else, and we look at other people in that organization, in that role, we do not see that skill. Where did they get it? I took a course, I went to Coursera, went to Greed, I watched a 5-minute YouTube video. There's lots of answers on why you can get that, right? But that's where, because of the size of our data set, we can see those adjacent skills that you have, and you don't know about them much of the time, right? Maybe it's a different coding language maybe it's an older one, but you could learn it fairly quickly.
Right. Opening it up to the group, I feel like that's kind of the vibe of the room right now, this idea of, skills over experience, and so as we're trying to implement that for leaders in the room, what are some of the common potential objections that could potentially come up, and how do you navigate those objections if you're trying to implement that change in your organization and you're getting some upstream headwinds, just for the whole group?
Well, we've been successful dealing with the education issue. It's pretty much nearly gone in terms of a 4-year degree. We are requiring a GED for the blue collar, the workers, because they are so essential, because we need to understand that they have some basics in arithmetic. So without the education, we're having them undergo a few more skill assessments in the pre-screening phase. So that's for the blue collars. For the white collars, the education gives the business a sense of confidence for some reason. Like if they took the SAT and they followed that traditional path, like they're a good person. So this is a bias that is very powerful, that we are being very careful with, not to be a juggernaut per se, but like, is that really the case? Is it true? Like if they went to a 4-year degree or went through it, they are a good person? Let's just look at our biases. So we've had a lot of work in, bias change. So what we're doing is really connecting the skills with the experience, because they'll say, Christine, this person has great experience, but no skills, so no go. So the sweet spot is some skills, but experience. And you kind of play with those two levers. And if they don't have the skills, kind of like what Joe, you're saying, we're like, okay, well, let's quickly help them gather those skills, even at the point of entry, when we see they have the experience, but maybe they don't have that software skill set. So we've developed 2 programs or platforms internally. One is called My Career Portal, and this is where users, employees can go to get experience and training and get assessments on everything: supply chain, finance, biz dev, quality control. It's amazing. And then we've also started a personal mentoring initiative called Cheer. So we're starting with women of color first, because that's where we are really seeing low representation. And that is our focus right now. But we hope to implement Cheer throughout every single, I would say, group or community within Alstom. So everyone has that specific one-on-one mentoring opportunity. I really think you're onto something here where it's individualized, right? Because someone may have taken French in high school and they need French to advance because we're a French company. So it's like, okay, let's get you onto Preply, or let's help you download an app so you can enhance your French. So it's not just what Alstom is doing, but we're also encouraging our people to say, hey, tuition reimbursement. Like, remember tuition reimbursement? Like, that was a really sexy thing back in the 80s and 90s. And also, like, take initiative outside of Alstom, because we can't be everything. And I think it's important that we have expectations that we can meet.
Mm-hmm. I would also say, look at where you can develop some small wins. I think sometimes as leaders, we get overwhelmed and consumed by trying to boil the ocean. And it's like, oh, that won't work. Not everything has to be a program. Not everything has to be an initiative. It can be authentically embedded into your everyday practices, right? And I like to use this phrase of go where the energy is. I like to find a business, a department who are super engaged. I have leadership support where I can use a case study scenario and say, this is how this is working in your business. And I think leaders love a little friendly competition. So when we can showcase that and use transparency to show what's winning, what's working, no leader wants to be left out of that, right? And so that slowly starts to build a process that allows us to build that community and culture and be the through thread throughout the organization.
Yeah. I want to go ahead and move on. Joe, so Smart and Final, after many years of Smart and Final, you were acquired 2 years ago by Chedraui, yeah. And so in our conference prep, you talked about how focusing on culture during that time was really transformational and just really integral to that process. What were some of the specific strategies and actions that you implemented or saw to implement in order to achieve that?
Yeah, so to give you a little background, Smart and Final was a 160-year-old company with 255 stores that was purchased by a 60-store company that was only 25 years old. And I had spent my entire career at Smart and Final. This new company comes in, doubles the size of our company. So we went from 12,000 to 25,000 people overnight, because they also have another banner in Texas called Fiesta. And so all these people came together. At the time, Smart and Final was about 50% Latinx. El Super and Fiesta are 95% Latinx. And so immediately we came to this conclusion that it wasn't a race thing that was happening, it was a culture thing that was happening. We had two nationalities, in a sense, having to figure out a way to work together. People that thought completely differently about the way you should live, coming together and all working in the same place. And so being the talent development guy, my thought was, let's put them in a training class together, as many as we possibly can. And for the last 2 years, we have pounded all the store leaders, all the executive leaders, put them in as many learning environments together as we possibly could. Because one of the beliefs we hold is that language determines culture. And I'm not talking about English versus Spanish. I'm talking about the language we speak. In those learning environments, we all started to develop a consistent language. Saying things like, what are your strengths? Because we put everybody through Gallup Strengths Finder. We put everybody through 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So people started to say, be proactive, begin with the end in mind. What are your big rocks? What are your, what's important? What's urgent? And all of a sudden, this language started to take hold. And all the other things that were between us started to go away, and we started using this common language. Mm-hmm. And so those learning environments put us in this amazing spot where we were open to what the other people would say. And a quick story that's a great example of this. And there was a leader in the first program where we combined all 3 banners, and he happened to be an immigrant from Iran. And he had only been in this country for 10 years. And he was already a regional director for us. And he started telling us stories of what it's like to live in Iran. Mm-hmm. And he started telling us about his family in Iran. And you could have heard a pin drop, like I can hear in this room right now. Him being so transparent in that learning environment started breaking walls down. And then the next person said, well, you know what? I grew up in El Salvador, and this is what it was like for me. And all of a sudden, these conversations just started going, and I'm like, well, my curriculum is out the door. Let's go. Let's have a conversation. And we had 40 leaders in a room start to talk about their experiences. And that started to transform the culture. You said work in progress?
Yeah.
We're a huge work in progress still. But we're moving in the right direction because we're trying to create this common language through bringing people together and giving them common experiences.
Yeah, yeah, great. Opening it up to the group, and I know we're almost at time. Just general takeaways or best practices for the leaders in the room about deepening and improving company culture. Just really broadening it, opening it up. Hot takes, quips, anecdotes. Finishing, as we have just a few minutes left, 2 or 3 shares.
Yeah, I'll start real quick. I used to tell my teams this all the time. We dictate our own culture on our team. Yes, I wish I worked for a company that the culture was great from the top down. Not saying I don't, it is. Right, but I've been in organizations where it wasn't great, and I didn't let that stop me. Like, we're gonna have a great culture on our team. These 8 people or 12 people or 100 people, whatever size of the team that you run, have a great culture there. And then my thought was that other people are going to see that, and they're going to want to either be a part of that, or that's going to chase them out of the organization, right? So let the other teams see what we're doing, see how we're bonding, seeing how we're producing. And I always knew that the other smart people around, if they saw that they would get on board with it.
I would just say I think we have an opportunity to listen. I think we have an opportunity to look at who's sharing in the room and who's not sharing in the room, and thinking about the equitable ways we need to get that information from our people that will inform, I think, the steps ahead in what we do and the right decisions with intention that we need to make for inclusion.
Right. I would say trust your gut. When you see something, or you feel something, you hear something about your culture and it strikes you as wrong, fix it. Find an ally, because there's probably someone else that is feeling the same way. You can change your culture. You don't have to rely on everyone else. It just takes one person to move forward in the right direction.
Yeah. I would say creating a space for psychological safety. I think that's a huge part of a culture in terms of your wellness, your mental wellness, well-being. And so when people feel like they can trust you in that, and you create a safe space for that, it offers and it helps shape your culture.
And I would just say invest in coaching. I know that sounds weird based on everything you said, But invest in as many people as you
Yeah.
possibly can to become coaches, because individual effort on each individual person makes the biggest difference.
So true.
Terrific. And I think we'll end there. Let's give our panel a big round of applause.
Thank you.
Awesome work.